Before we do, do you mind if we just pull up this question? There's a brother that's been asking it, trying to get on.
What's the timestamp?
I've just popped it up on mine. If you just pull my comment up. So I'll try and answer this quickly, and then I'll just have to go now, unfortunately. But Jazakallah.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
So the brother asked, how can we be certain about deductive logic results right now? And could we maximize rationality in the future and improve our rationality to get a better conclusion? So with regards to deductive arguments, the way they work is, so there's a distinction between valid and soundness. So a valid argument that is deductive basically means that if the propositions are true, then the conclusion necessarily has to be true. So a deductive argument itself doesn't say anything about the truth of the argument. You have to assess the propositions or the premises independently. If you can ascertain that the premises are true, then the conclusion necessarily has to be true, because that's to do with valid inference. So the standard example is Socrates is a human. All humans are mortal. Therefore, Socrates is mortal. So this would be a deductive argument. But then you'd have to ask the questions. Is Socrates a mortal, or are we talking about someone's pet who happens to be called Socrates? Sorry, a human. It could be a dog called Socrates. So these are the kind of questions you would have to ask. So what I would just suggest is that there's a number of courses you can do studying reason and logic, and you sort of need to get your head around. It can be a bit of a head pickle.
Yusuf, that's not his question. His question is about so he's trying to say, are deductive arguments invalidated or weakened epistemically by virtue of the fact that we have limited rationality and we may improve our rationality in the future?
Yeah.
The reason I know this, bro, because the same guy asked the same question, and he just summarized it. He asked it a few days ago, and I answered it in very similar ways as you did. I added the fact that yes, it's actually right. Everyone has epistemic limitations. We're never going to, there could be a possibility in the future that our rational faculties and the way we use them as individuals or collective can improve to produce better results. But that doesn't undermine the validity of the necessity of a conclusion in a deductive argument. If the premises are sound, which means they are justified, then the premises guarantee the truth of the conclusion, given the fact that obviously it's valid, it logically follows. But those are two distinct things. I think he's not understanding that. And I think this may be a case of waswasa, because it was already answered and we articulated in a way just to satisfy another answer. So my personal response to this would be to the brother, this may not be your problem at all. Since you repeated the question, you got a same answer. What you need to do is basically explore other things in your spiritual life that may be causing this, or even your social life, whatever the case may be. And just have a nice reflection, my dear brother. It happens to everybody, happens to me, happens to everybody. And just find out, what is the kind of, maybe the psychological, spiritual cause for me really wanting an answer to such a question. But just to reiterate, just because that we may have limited cognitive faculties and we may improve in the future, that itself doesn't undermine the fact that a sound, valid, deductive argument that the conclusion necessarily follows. They're two distinct things, okay? Yep. And that's something that you really need to understand. And I remember what I mentioned about Al-Ghazali. He made a beautiful point. He said, if your iman is contingent on some abstract presuppositions, with all due respect, someone's going to be smarter than you and change the premises. And that's what you do when you study research philosophy. You're taught to muck about with stuff like that. And if your iman is just contingent on that, then you're in big trouble. We're all in big trouble, because someone's going to be smarter than you. Like, with guaranteed, someone's going to be smarter than you, yeah? And so what you need to do is you need to start internalizing the tradition. And Al-Ghazali makes this point. He says you need to internalize the Quran and the Sunnah and the Hadith and have that experience as well, which really solidifies your iman. This doesn't mean we don't have proofs. Of course we have. It doesn't mean that we don't have the best arguments. Of course we have. It doesn't mean Islam cannot be intellectually proven. Of course it can. But from an individual first-person experience point of view, there is going to be someone smarter than you that you're going to have one day. And they may be able to play around with your premises and you may not understand what's going on. Don't make your iman reliant on these abstract proofs. They're good, they're useful, and they're necessary in some cases. But you have to start internalizing the deen. You have to start practicing the deen, and otherwise it could leave you in an utter mess in this world. Yeah. And this is so significant. Take it from Al-Ghazali, who had a journey of doubt. His life is an ayah, honestly. And then he turns around and looks at his history and past and says, you know what? He refuted the philosophers. Tahafut al-Falasifa. He was the person of kalam. But then he realized kalam could be a poison if you're not sick. Kalam is good if you're sick. Give them some kalam. But it depends who they are, he even said. And he made a really good point. You need to start, these abstract proofs are not everything. So you have to understand this, because if you don't go on a path of internalizing the deen, it could utterly really mess you up, and shaitan will use it as excuses to mess you up.
Yeah, it's a consequence of creativity as well. It's like the creative person notices a gray area in their knowledge. So they know that, here there's a lot of things that I don't know, that I could be wrong about X, Y, Z. And then the brain produces countless possibilities and then gives them all equal epistemic weight and says, oh, well, if that's possible, and that's possible, and that's possible, what reason do I have to value one over the other? But we could say the same. Well, it is quote unquote possible that the universe was created 5 minutes ago, and that everything before it, all your memories, all the evidence of history, were created 5 minutes ago as well, with you and with everything else. And that's the case, but it's also, you can also make that argument for 6 minutes ago, 7 minutes ago, 8 minutes ago, and you can do that ad infinitum. Now, just because that is an open possibility due to your lack of knowledge, it doesn't mean that it's actually possible. They can't all be the case. And, there's a billions, well, infinite amount of timestamps you could use in that example alone. But, the question is, well, do I have reasons to accept that as a genuine possibility? And if not, why am I entertaining it? So, you've got to be careful, because otherwise you end up getting yourself sort of lost in these creative quagmires, because your brain is just capable of sort of producing.
And if once you taste something, if you taste it and it tastes like truth, and if you taste it and it tastes sweet, then there you go. You don't need to go anywhere else, because exactly. You've tasted it, and that taste requires you connecting to Allah, you doing your dhikr, you doing your adhkar, and I'm telling you, everything is going to be fine, inshallah. Take it from me.
Thank you. Thank you so much, guys.
I've had similar, Habibi, I've had similar experiences. You just need to connect to Allah, and wallahi, if you traverse on that path and you learn Allah's names and attributes, I guarantee you everything is going to be fine, inshallah. Okay?
May Allah grant it to him. Right, I've got to go, guys.
Yusuf, may Allah bless you, bro. You're a soldier. You're a warrior. I love you to bits. You are. Wallahi, I love you, man. Jazakallah for your time.
Thank you so much
for having me. And I'll talk to you again, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.